They feed on your reactions. Your anger, your confusion, your need for validation. It's all fuel for the narcissist's illusion of power. They craft traps with their words, lace conversations with manipulation, and thrive when you lose control. But what if you could become untouchable? What if you could stand in absolute stillness while their chaos crumbled around you? This is not about revenge. It's about liberation. The Stoics knew how to navigate poisonous personalities long before the word narcissist was ever coined. They mastered the inner fortress, the ability to remain unmoved in the face of insult, betrayal, or provocation. And if you understand just 4 core tactics, you'll never fall into their web again. The first tactic is non-reactivity. A narcissist will test you. They'll poke, prod, and provoke, waiting for an emotional response. But when you respond with calm, detached awareness, they lose. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you." He was reminding us that meaning is made in the mind. And the moment you stop assigning significance to their petty games, you rob them of the satisfaction they crave. This doesn't mean you suppress your emotions. It means you rise above the immediate urge to defend yourself. You watch your anger arise like a passing storm and let it move on without chasing it. To a narcissist, your silence is unsettling. Your refusal to be baited breaks the cycle they depend on. The second tactic is strategic detachment. Seneca said, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." When you emotionally invest in everyone's opinion, especially those who do not have your best interest at heart, you fragment your power. A narcissist thrives when they feel central in your universe. But the Stoic distances himself, not coldly, but wisely. You observe without absorbing. You hear without internalizing. This kind of emotional distance isn't cruelty, it's clarity. You stop trying to change them, heal them, or make them understand. That's not your burden. Your peace becomes your priority. And when you're no longer dancing to their rhythm, they lose their grip. The third tactic is unshakable self-respect. Epictetus reminds us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Narcissists seek control through erosion, slowly wearing down your sense of self-worth, making you question your value, your memory, your strength. But a Stoic doesn't outsource his dignity. He builds it inwardly, brick by brick, with his principles, his actions, and his quiet resilience. You stop asking, "What do they think of me?" and start asking, "What do I think of myself?" You begin living in alignment with your own standards. Not to impress, not to retaliate, but to honor the self-respect that no one can take unless you hand it over. And when you hold firm to your integrity, the narcissist finds nothing to manipulate. The fourth tactic is radical acceptance, not of abuse, but of reality. The Stoics never wasted energy hoping others would become who they wished. Instead, they said, "This is what it is. Now what will I do with it?" You stop expecting apologies that will never come. You stop waiting for empathy from someone who sees people as tools. You accept what is, and then choose how to move forward. This is where your true power emerges. You no longer need them to understand you. You no longer crave closure from the same mind that caused the chaos. You close the door yourself, calmly, without drama. And here's the paradox. The more stoic you become, the more infuriating your peace is to the narcissist. They can't understand why their manipulation isn't working, why you're no longer dancing to their tune. But that's not your concern anymore. Because your life is no longer about surviving them, it's about thriving beyond them. You become the storm they cannot shake, the silence that speaks louder than confrontation. And as they flail in search of control, you walk away, not with bitterness, but with sovereign grace. Because walking away is not weakness. It is the ultimate strength. The strength to choose yourself over chaos. The strength to no longer seek validation from those who are incapable of offering it. The Stoics never sought to change the nature of others, they sought to change their own responses. And that is where true freedom lives. The narcissist will notice. They'll notice when their insults fall flat, when their guilt trips echo in an empty space, when their absence no longer wounds you. At first, they may escalate. The games become more subtle, the praise more intoxicating, the punishment more calculated. But you're no longer playing. You're no longer sitting at their table waiting for scraps of affection or moments of clarity. You've moved on to something higher, something unshakable. In this space, your energy begins to return. The tension in your chest eases. Your mind stops rehearsing comebacks or dissecting conversations. You feel quiet inside, not because nothing is happening, but because you've finally taken control of what matters most, your inner world. The Stoics understood this deeply. They knew that the battlefield was never out there, it was within. And when you win there, no one, not even the most manipulative person, can truly defeat you. What comes next isn't revenge, and it isn't confrontation. It's evolution. The narcissist may continue their patterns with others, but you'll be long gone. Not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. You'll be in a different realm, one of grounded peace and principled living. And the best part? You won't need anyone to witness your growth for it to be real. You'll feel it every day in your quiet confidence, in your emotional balance, in the way you no longer react, but respond with clarity or simply walk away. The world will still be full of people who try to provoke, control, or manipulate. But now you've seen behind the curtain. You've learned the discipline of the Stoic path. You know how to hold your line, keep your peace, and maintain your self-respect no matter who tries to steal it. So when the narcissist circles back, because they always do, you'll be untouchable. Not because you built walls, but because you became whole. And this wholeness, this quiet, grounded, unwavering presence, is what they'll never be able to steal, copy, or understand. They may smile like before, say the right words, pretend they've changed. But now you see through it all. Not with anger. Not with bitterness. With clarity. And that clarity makes you immune. You remember what Epictetus taught, that the true test of character is how you deal with what's beyond your control. And other people's behavior, especially the narcissists, is far beyond it. But your response? That's your kingdom. And you rule it with discipline. So you no longer fantasize about explaining yourself or proving your worth. You no longer rehearse arguments in your head. You walk into each moment with presence, because your peace is no longer conditional on who walks beside you, or who walks away. This is what unnerves the narcissist the most. Not your anger, not your silence, but your indifference. Not cold detachment, but radiant indifference. The kind that says, "You have no power over me because I've reclaimed it from within." Now, your energy is redirected, not wasted on defending yourself against false narratives or chasing the ever-moving goalpost of their approval, but used to build your life. A life guided by Stoic values, wisdom, courage, justice, temperance. Principles they could never understand, let alone follow. And while they continue their dance of illusion, crafting new masks, playing new games, you've stepped into a higher plane. One where truth is quiet, strength is steady, and peace is earned, not given. This is how you break the narcissist's control. Not by fighting them, but by refusing to be controlled. By seeing them clearly, acting wisely, and choosing yourself again and again, without apology. It's not a battle of words or will. It's a quiet revolution. One that takes place within. One they'll never see coming. And as they slip into the background, confused by your calm and unnerved by your absence, you won't look back. Not out of pride. Not out of spite. But because forward is the only direction left for someone who's finally free. Now you understand, this wasn't just about them. It was about you. About reclaiming your strength, your stillness, your sovereignty. You begin to notice subtle shifts, not just in how you respond to the narcissist, but in how you carry yourself in every area of life. Where once you sought external affirmation, now you move according to inner alignment. Where once you felt the need to defend your choices, now you simply live them, rooted in quiet certainty. The Stoic within you is no longer a theory, it is now embodied. Each day becomes an opportunity to test your self-mastery. Not in grand displays of detachment, but in the small, private moments. Choosing silence over reaction, purpose over drama, solitude over toxicity. Even your definition of strength changes. You realize it's not loud. It's not aggressive. It's not about winning arguments or proving your worth. Real strength is invisible to most. It's in the pause before you speak. It's in the choice not to respond to provocation. It's in your ability to let someone misunderstand you and feel no urge to correct them. This is the Stoic way. And the narcissist, once a looming shadow in your world, now becomes a distant figure. Still repeating their patterns, still seeking new targets, still hoping for a reaction. But you're no longer available for that cycle. Your soul has outgrown it. Now, when you encounter people who remind you of the same manipulative traits, whether in friends, co-workers, or even family, you no longer question your instincts. You don't second-guess the red flags. You honor your boundaries like a sacred law, not because you're rigid, but because your peace is priceless. You also stop explaining your transformation. People may wonder why you're so calm, why you no longer engage in gossip, why you're no longer easily rattled. Let them wonder. You don't owe anyone the blueprint to your peace. If they're meant to understand, they will. If not, you continue walking your path, steady, focused, free. This journey isn't about pretending to be unaffected. It's about becoming so deeply aware that you no longer react from pain. You respond from wisdom. You no longer move to control outcomes. You surrender to what is, while fiercely guarding your values. And perhaps the greatest irony of all is this: the very person who tried to shatter your identity became the catalyst for your awakening. Their manipulation forced you inward. Their cruelty sharpened your discernment. Their chaos sent you searching for stillness. And you found it. Not in them. Not in revenge. But in yourself. And because you found it within, no one can take it from you. This inner stillness, once unfamiliar, now a constant companion, becomes your compass. Life no longer feels like a battlefield, but a proving ground for your discipline. Where once you braced for the next emotional ambush, you now walk unguarded, not because danger is gone, but because fear is. You've transcended the game. When a narcissist re-enters your orbit, whether in a different form or the same face, you sense it instantly, not through suspicion, but through wisdom. Their charm feels hollow. Their compliments land without weight. Their attempts at control, once so potent, now feel almost juvenile. You don't engage. You don't explain. You simply move on, as if passing a shadow on the wall. This isn't indifference out of pride, it's maturity. It's understanding the cost of sacrificing your peace just to entertain someone's dysfunction. And you won't pay that price again. Now you invest your energy in different places. In quiet reflection. In meaningful work. In relationships rooted in respect, not performance. You seek depth over spectacle, truth over image, stillness over noise. You also begin to see others who are still trapped, those being drained by the same kind of narcissistic forces you've broken free from. And while you could intervene, the Stoic in you knows, each must come to their own awakening. Just as you did. So you become a living example instead. Come. Grounded. Whole. A reminder that freedom is possible. You don't lecture. You live. And over time, the storm inside you becomes a memory. Not forgotten, but transformed. It no longer stirs emotion, it offers perspective. You no longer look back with regret. You look back with gratitude, not for the pain, but for what it taught you. Because the truth is, you were never broken. Only buried. Beneath layers of self-doubt, people-pleasing, and misplaced loyalty. The Stoic journey didn't give you something new. It helped you remember what was always there. The quiet strength, the unwavering dignity, the clarity of purpose. Now, every decision is filtered through this awareness. Every boundary, every conversation, every step forward. You are no longer defined by who tried to break you, but by how you rebuilt. Not louder, not harder, just truer. And while the world may still be loud with distractions, your inner world remains undisturbed. And that, above all, is the victory the narcissist will never understand. So now, you live by different rules. Not the rules others impose, not the illusions narcissists weave to control or confuse, but the quiet laws of inner discipline. You begin your mornings with intention, not anxiety. You speak only when your words serve truth. You listen not to react, but to understand. And when silence is the wiser choice, you let it speak for you. This calm is not a performance. It's not something you wear like armor to appear strong. It is who you are now. The chaos outside has become irrelevant because your peace inside has become non-negotiable. There will still be moments that test you. Moments when the shadows of the past flicker across your path. A sudden message. A familiar tone. A situation that feels all too recognizable. But now you don't flinch. You don't spiral. You pause. You breathe. And you choose differently. You recognize manipulation in its earliest form, not because you're paranoid, but because you're trained. You spot the emotional hooks before they're cast. And you don't pull away in fear, you simply don't bite. The narcissist might interpret your stillness as weakness. They might say you've changed, that you're cold, distant, selfish. But you know better. You haven't changed. You've returned. Returned to yourself, to your worth, to your standards. And you now guard that return like sacred ground. Where once you would explain your boundaries, now you enforce them with quiet conviction. Where once you would doubt your intuition, now you trust it like a compass forged in fire. And where once you would have given endless chances, you now give closure, not with drama, but with a door gently, firmly closed. You begin to attract different energy. People who value truth, not games. People who respect time, not demand it. People who walk with their own integrity and recognize it in you. This is the invisible reward of the Stoic path. Not applause. Not recognition. But alignment. Life begins to align around your principles because you are no longer compromising them. Not for anyone. Not even for love. Especially not for manipulation dressed as love. You don't need to expose the narcissist. You don't need revenge. The greatest exposure is your peace. The greatest revenge is your growth. And the greatest power is your freedom, earned, not given. And so, the story continues, not with confrontation, but with clarity. Not with noise, but with silence. Not with hate, but with wisdom. The kind of wisdom only born through fire. The kind that no narcissist can ever take away again. Because now, every step you take is deliberate. There's no rush, no desperation to fix, to prove, to convince. That anxious urgency that once haunted you, the feeling that you had to make someone see your worth, that's gone. In its place is something quieter, deeper, self-possession. You notice it in how you move through rooms. You no longer shrink to accommodate others. You no longer mold yourself to fit their expectations. You simply exist, anchored, present, whole. Not seeking approval, not avoiding disapproval. Just being. And that, in itself, becomes a silent kind of power. The narcissist's world is built on control. On shifting sands. on illusions and borrowed identities. But your world now is built on truth. And truth does not tremble in the presence of deception. It stands, even when it stands alone. So when others question your silence, your distance, your boundaries, you do not defend. You don't argue. You don't need to. Because the Stoic knows that clarity doesn't always require explanation. That peace is often misunderstood by those addicted to chaos. And that dignity, real dignity, doesn't raise its voice. You start to see how much you've grown by what no longer moves you. The manipulative flattery. The veiled insults. The backhanded apologies. None of it lands anymore. You see it, but you don't absorb it. You don't take the bait, because there is no hook left to catch. You've become immune to the game because you've stepped off the board. And in this immunity, there's a kind of rebirth. You start rediscovering yourself. The parts of you that were suppressed under the weight of someone else's ego. The dreams you delayed. The confidence you once doubted. The intuition you once ignored. It all begins to return, not all at once, but in quiet waves. You begin to feel light again, not because life is easy, but because your soul is no longer carrying what doesn't belong to it. You no longer confuse suffering with loyalty. You no longer romanticize emotional survival as love. And most of all, you no longer mistake your empathy for weakness. You now use it with discernment. You protect it. You offer it where it's valued, not exploited. You've learned that you are not here to fix broken people who refuse to see their own damage. You are here to grow, to serve, to live, not bleed for someone else's healing they won't even begin. This is how Stoicism transforms you. Not into a statue of cold reason, but into a living embodiment of balance. A mind rooted in logic. A heart protected by wisdom. A soul guided by purpose. And the narcissist? They fade. Their voice, once loud in your mind, is now distant background noise. Their influence, once so deep, now hollow. You no longer resist them. You simply outgrow them. And in that quiet, graceful exit, you win. Because winning, in the Stoic sense, was never about domination. It was about mastery. Mastery of the self. Mastery of one's inner world. And now you understand. No one can control you unless you give them the keys to your attention, your emotions, your values. And you've taken those keys back. Your silence is no longer a retreat, it's a declaration. It says, I do not need to fight to be free. You are no longer at war with anyone. Not even the narcissist. Especially not yourself. You realize now that all along, they were never the real enemy. The real battle was between your higher self and the part of you that still hoped they would change. That still believed you could earn what they refused to give. That still mistook manipulation for love and control for connection. But you see clearly now. And clarity is a quiet kind of power. It doesn't scream, it doesn't plead, it simply knows. You move differently. You spend time in stillness. You read more. You speak less. You say no without guilt and yes without fear. You surround yourself with people who don't drain you, who don't perform kindness, but embody it. You start to trust that the right ones will never need to be convinced of your worth. And the wrong ones? You let them go without ceremony. Not because they didn't matter, but because they no longer define what matters. This is how the Stoic lives, not hardened, but disciplined. Not unfeeling, but deeply selective. You feel everything, but you no longer act on impulse. You observe. You reflect. You wait. And in that space between feeling and action, you find your freedom. You start to see your past not as a scar, but as scripture, a sacred lesson written in pain and clarity. It taught you what you needed to know. It brought you to this threshold, this version of yourself you never thought you'd become, grounded, discerning, fearless in your solitude. And you realize you're no longer healing from them. You're building beyond them. Not to prove anything. Not to show them what they lost. But because life is far too short to live inside someone else's prison. So you open the windows. Let in the air. Light a quiet fire within. And without making a sound, you begin again. Still walking. Still watching. Still rising. You begin again, but not as the same person who once tolerated the intolerable, who bent and twisted to fit into someone else's frame. This new beginning is not loud. There's no grand announcement. It's subtle, intentional, sacred. You no longer run from solitude. You welcome it. Because now you understand what the Stoics always knew, that solitude is not loneliness, it is power. In it, you refine your thoughts, examine your motives, and reconnect with the only constant in your life, yourself. This isn't about escaping the world. It's about facing it with clarity. You move through life with calm eyes. You don't chase what flees, and you don't cling to what's fading. When something ends, you let it. When someone shows you who they are, you believe them the first time. The Stoic mind doesn't argue with reality, it aligns with it. And now so do you. There are moments when you still feel the sting of what happened. A memory will flash. A word, a look, the way you were made to feel small for simply existing. But instead of spiraling, you breathe. You place the moment in its place. Behind you, not within you. It happened. It shaped you. But it no longer defines you. This is the gift of emotional discipline. You no longer reject the past, but you no longer live in it either.